little bit about myself. I'm not a gearhead. I'm not a professional motorcycle mechanic. My living was as a blue-collar worker. I spent 25 years as an elevator technician, installing, servicing, and adjusting elevators. So I have a pretty good electrical mechanical background. However, that doesn't make me a motorcycle mechanic or a gearhead by any stretch of the imagination. So my interest in motorcycles started, whenever The Great Escape came out, which was probably 64, 65. So I guess I'm 8 or 9 years old. And that was it. When Steve McQueen was trying to jump over the barbed wire fence and the Germans from the camp were chasing him. And I still can picture that Steve McQueen had on what seemed like a cut-off sleeve sweatshirt, and it was made to look like an Indian Sport Scout, but if I remember correctly, it actually was a Triumph motorcycle. Anyway, there's videos about that on YouTube, The Great Escape. So that's how my interest in cool motorcycles was born. And I started to ride a motorcycle, actually my older brother's 305 Honda, I'm guessing like 65 or 66. So I was 12 or 13 years old. In fact, the first time I got chased by the police on a motorcycle was when I was 12 or 13 years old. And I actually was on my brother's 305 Honda. Our entire family was having a Memorial Day picnic. And so all the adults were probably drinking way too much. And I asked if I could take the bike for a ride. My older brother said, go ahead. And it wasn't long, I had a local policeman on my tail. And at 13 years old, I guess I thought I was Steve McQueen because I tried to outrun the cops. And I actually did a pretty good job. But they eventually caught me. Anyway, so as a young man, we had Hondas, we had Ducatis, we had a Norton, I've had 2 Harley Davidsons. The motorcycle I owned the longest was a 1964 Triumph Trophy. And I bought it with my paper route money in 1968, bought it from a fireman in Hamden, Connecticut. I actually pushed it home because it wouldn't start, uphill, downhill, uphill. It sat in my garage until I turned 16, which was 1969. Same year of Woodstock. And that motorcycle was good to me for the next 10 years. I rode that 1964 Triumph Trophy for the next 10 years of my life. At which point I was married, had a little girl, and was time to sort of quit motorcycling. At least for about 20 or 30 years. So I have to explain to you that after a life-threatening medical situation that I survived in the early part of this century, I found myself in 2004, 2005, having a deep desire to own, to live, fulfill my lifelong dream and own an Indian motorcycle. And I was totally drawn to the remake and to the new coming of Indian, which they were built in Gilroy, California. They started to produce them in 1999. The corporate office was in Toronto, Canada, and they did that to get around the U.S. patent laws. I don't know how many people know that. However, they were in full production in California by 1999. And so I've had 2 Indian Spirits, an 01 and an 02. I had a 1999 Indian Chief with an S&S engine. And the mistake or the big change for me came when I rode a Power Plus Chief, having had 2 Spirits and an Indian Chief with an S&S engine in '99. My first ride on a Power Plus Chief, a 2003 red Springfield, changed my motorcycle career forever. And I was immediately hooked. The difference in the ride quality from the early Gilroy bike with the S&S Chief and the aftermarket frame was amazing when it came to the 03 Chief, which had an in-house, custom-built Power Plus frame, Power Plus 100 cubic inch engine. The ride quality was unbelievable. The balance for a big machine at around 750 pounds to a guy my size, 5'9", 170 pounds, was easy to balance. Was a much easier ride than the S&S bikes. And so I became immediately hooked. So I have to confess to you that since '06, I have rebuilt and restored 7 or 8 Gilroy Power Plus bikes for myself and for customers. There is no bike on the face of the earth, my opinion, again, a lot of people are going to look at this and everybody's got their opinion. I don't mean to harm anybody's opinion. I don't mean to debate with anybody about any different motorcycle, but I found my niche with these Power Plus bikes for reasons that I'll be going over with you over the next year that it takes me to build this. So anyway, this is an introduction to what I'm doing. I'm just going to go on for a few minutes longer, and this will be our first episode. So I'll now start by explaining that I had the good fortune of purchasing an '03 Power Plus motorcycle, Indian Chief, that had had some very minor damage from an accident. And due to an event of circumstances, I was able to purchase this for, something that was beyond reasonable. And so I said to myself, that's my bike. I'm going to restore this bike, rebuild this bike. I'm going to be responsible for building this motorcycle from the ground up. So this is one of the '03 Gilroy Indian Chiefs that I have restored. I didn't take this motorcycle down to the frame. However, I did go right down to the transmission and the oil tank. And that's usually how far I go. So I wanted you to see one that I had redone. I redid this one around 5 years ago. And so it's a stock Indian Springfield model. It's the stock sheet metal that's on it. It was very low mileage when I bought this bike. However, when I get one of these '03 Power Plus bikes, the mileage doesn't matter. I take the engines out and I send them to Nevada to Joe Malfa. If you look for Jam Limited, Jam Ltd, on Google, you'll find Joe's website. So Joe has rebuilt 6 Power Plus engines for me. He turns them into a performance engine. And as you can see by looking at this engine, it's got lots of chrome on it. It has a performance cam. It has the upgraded oil pump. It has the flywheel correction also, which the oil pump and the flywheel keyway being out a few thousandths and causing a balance issue with the flywheel are in essence what has given this engine a bad reputation and really what put Indian out of business in '03, which it's a real shame that that happened because they were onto something, and they were onto something great. And Indian went out of business in 1953, and there's nothing like that first comeback, that 1999 to '03 comeback, where from 99 through '01 they were getting their feet wet. And finally in '02 they came out with their own product. And again, to me, this is it. This is the finest motorcycle, the nicest looking motorcycle that you could buy any place now, including the new Indians. This has a Mikuni 42 carburetor, very easy to work on, does not have to be dyno tuned, can be adjusted by yourself with just a little bit of reading, a little bit of hands-on practical experience. So lots of upgrades on this motorcycle. The front and rear crash bars, 1.25" fat bars for the handlebars, these large powder coated spotlights which are airbrushed, the red rims. So the rims are powder coated red, and then the chrome, the spokes and the hubs are chromed, so it gives it a real retro look. Here's the Indian transmission cover that we talked about a little earlier in the video. The bike rides fabulous. I have some of these Indian head mirrors on the motorcycle. It has the very rare full-size Indian tachometer, fender rails on the front. So I wanted to show you guys one example of an Indian Chief that I've done over. As I said, that I went all the way down. The only thing I didn't take off this motorcycle was the transmission and the oil tank. Everything else got stripped off, re-chromed, re-powder coated, engine rebuilt, and put back together. And I can't tell you how much fun it is to ride this motorcycle in the little rural town that I live in, down to either our local Dunkin' Donuts on a weeknight or our local ice cream shop when there's 50 Harley Davidsons in the parking lot, and I pull in on one of these Indian Chiefs, and it's a lot of fun. It's an awful lot of fun. Anyway, wanted to show you an example of one that I finished. So I'm just walking around the Chief a little bit, trying to show off some of the things that I've done to it. These gas caps are pretty cool. They've got Indian Chiefs engraved in the top, and they're gold. I have feathers on all of the Chiefs that I've done. Sort of has a spiritual meaning to me. Fender rail, seat rail, excuse me. These really cool covers, which used to be made, these primary covers, which were made by a guy in California who unfortunately sort of quit doing stuff. Really nice petcock on the motorcycle. You can see that I've got the brake cover on the front. Let me walk around here. I apologize if I'm going a little bit too fast to show this off. Indian airbrushed around the front of the dash in big gold letters. Let's get down and have a better look at this bottle cap Power Plus engine. Really, really, really something special. You know, the cool part about these gas caps is that they mimic the rocker box covers. So they have that same sort of a bottle cap look. And what's really cool is, you know, the Gilroy folks, when they did this in California, they were really trying to recapture, you know, the appeal of those pre-World War II and certainly through the 40s and into the 50s styling. And boy, I don't think there's any other attempt that comes close to these Gilroy 02 and 03 Power Plus bikes. Unfortunately, the engine gave them a little bit of a black eye. Oh, there's our Indian brake pedal, which, you know, I hope to be able to try to find somebody to make a few more of these for me. That's something else we might be able to offer, is that Indian brake pedal there. Anyway, a quick look now. My plan is, you know, I will give you a bird's eye view of the other 5 or 6 Chiefs that I've rebuilt. Besides this one here, I'll try and show all the others off to you also, while I bring you along on the journey of us together building an 03 Power Plus Chief from the frame up. Now, I was fortunate enough to already have this motorcycle that I'm building from the frame up. I've already, it's registered, and I actually have a title for it already too. I took care of that early on with a few quick repairs so that there would never be a question when I rebuilt it that I could just take it out for a ride, just jump on it and go for a ride after we build it from the ground up.